of Aldach, unfettered by obligations to his kin. He was ready, willing, and able to serve a new king, if that's what it took to keep his lands. Careful to remain outside missile range, yet moving close enough to read banners, he anticipated the castellan's response, waiting until the suspense grew thick enough to cut with a blade. If tensions turned to hostilities, his father would rush his mother from this field, but so long as there was a chance for a peaceful transition, she'd insisted upon remaining. Never daring a glance at his father, he thrust the standard higher, watching as the messenger spoke to the ramparts, tossing the weighted parchment over the wall. The gates did not open at once, but neither did they fire upon his man, and after what seemed an eternity, the messenger turned and trotted back. Even before he'd returned to the fold, a single, warbling horn trumpeted across the landscape, and the heavy portcullis began to rise, straining against its chains and groaning like a tired old man. The hairs on Malcolm's nape stood on end as the moment of truth arrived. Now, at long last, he cast a wary glance toward his brooding father. Hoping for what? Seated atop his war-horse, Ian McKinnon cut a daunting figure, even at his advanced age. The silver in his hair glinted more fiercely than did the steel in his scabbard, and his displeasure was evident in the set of his shoulders and the lock of his jaw, though he said not a word as his wife proceeded to tug her father's ring from her finger. Once removed, she placed the heirloom into the palm of her hand, offering it up for Malcolm to take. And this was the one concession she'd made to his father, that Malcolm must knowingly and wittingly accept all that came with her father's legacy. You must place it upon your small finger, Malcolm, and remember, what happens from the instant you ride through those gates will determine how they receive you. You are Aldach's new lord now. At her side, his father averted his gaze, his jaw clenching with barely suppressed ire. If it were up to him, he would have tossed Fitzsimon's ring into a bog as readily as he had embraced his Sassenach bride. Time and again he had beseeched Malcolm to stay and to bide his time, but Malcolm had refused, soured by the prospect of waiting for his father to die before beginning a new life. Far better to take what was offered now, and pray that his old man lived to raise more sons. However, his father did not see the world through Malcolm's eyes, and while he'd lent his sword to this cause, for love of his wife, he would not lend his heart. So be it. Resolved, Malcolm plucked up the sigil ring from his stepmother's palm and slid the golden two-headed falcon onto his small finger, then hesitated only a moment, thinking about the last time he and his father had stood here together, on this field, before Fitzsimon's gate. That was 13 years ago. As a boy of 6, he was unashamed to weep in his father's arms. His mother must have misunderstood his hesitation because she said, "You have the writ from the king and my father's ring. It will be enough." The gates were now open. Waiting. Still Malcolm lingered. God's bones, the best of all scenarios had occurred, and still, somehow, inexplicably, he felt a surge of loss in his heart. Had he hoped to fight today, if only to prove himself? Had he wanted his father to say, "Good show, son"? Perhaps, after all, he had only longed for a clap on the back and a bit of reassurance that all was not lost. Damnation, he was old enough to choose his own path. He didn't need his father's approval, and so it seemed he wasn't going to get it. "Art certain, mother?" he asked one final time. If she had a mind to, now would be the time to change her mind. Once he took possession of Aldach, nothing would be the same. "You are my son," she reassured, mistaking the question. And with a steel glint in his eyes, his father said, "Let us be done." Malcolm straightened his spine, lifting his banner. "Aye," he said in full agreement. "Let us be done." And then, without another word, he spurred his mount forward, hardening his heart. Now, dressed in his grandfather's cloak and wearing a dead man's sigil, he surged ahead of his troops, looking like a king in his own right, and carrying with him all the